Welcome to SVG-TV News for Tuesday, August 31st, 2021. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. The Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment today held a virtual news conference to update the Vaccination public on various COVID-19 related matters. In his presentation at the conference, Minister of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Sinclair Jimmy Prince, noted several areas of concern as SVG begins to see a slight uptick in COVID-19 cases. Minister Prince said contrary to several reports, there have been no cases of deaths related to any COVID-19 vaccine in the country.
We must do better. We have an excellent opportunity now to take the vaccine. We should not wait until there is an outbreak and our health service becomes overwhelmed, as is happening in some neighboring countries. Some areas of concern: increasing positivity rates and absolute numbers. That's very concerning, of course. Decreasing compliance with mask use, physical distancing, and hand sanitization, which I alluded to earlier. Alarming trend of mass gatherings. People are beginning again to get together without masks, without looking at the with reference to these protocols. Low vaccine uptake. For those waiting for approval, the Pfizer vaccine was granted full approval by the FDA of the United States and is available here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Disinformation, that's a major culprit. Reports of deaths due to vaccines in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are incorrect. We said that before, we continue to say it. People have been putting out that information. It is not true.
Minister Prince further expressed concern with the level of complacency as it relates to the various COVID-19 protocols, even as there is growing worry over the highly contagious Delta variant entering the general population.
Continues to formulate policies and measures aimed at keeping the country safe and to put us on a path to return to normalcy. We have been proactive in many instances because we believe that this pandemic, because of its many-sided nature, demands decisive and firm leadership. Indeed, we cannot shirk our responsibilities as a ministry and as a government. This is why, for instance, we amended the Public Health Act to ensure the safety of our frontline workers and the safety of those whom they serve. In the meantime, we continue to vigorously monitor the situation. It is necessary to remind ourselves at all times that the virus is very dangerous and that this country, like the rest of the world, is affected. Last week, we announced the presence of the Delta variant here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are now 3 confirmed cases, and 6 samples have been sent to CAFA for testing. This is indeed a very worrying development. This variant is much more transmissible, and it is much more dangerous. It seems we must redouble our efforts to comply with the protocols in order to keep ourselves safe. There is too much complacency in some quarters of our population and aggressive resistance in others.
The health minister also took the time to reiterate the importance of getting vaccinated and encourage persons to find credible sources in order to make an informed decision on vaccination.
Currently, we are monitoring the situation globally and across the region, and our team is preparing in the event of increased number of cases to quickly detect and contain the spread of COVID-19 cases here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We, however, cannot do it by ourselves. I ask you, my fellow Vincentians, to do your part. Take the vaccine. It is in your interest. It is for your health. Your general well-being depends on it. Ignore the negative noises and educate yourselves about the vaccines. Get information from reliable and scientific sources. We have to fight this together. The Ministry of Health will not let up until the country is safe and returned to normalcy. The Health Services Subcommittee, chaired by the Chief Medical Officer and her team, will continue to recommend and to work with various sectors to ensure compliance of all protocols and precautionary measures to slow the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Epidemiologist in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Tamara Bob, shared the various COVID-19 case numbers and accompanying statistics during today's virtual news conference. Bob noted that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has managed to maintain a positivity rate below 5% after the 12% positivity rate experienced during the COVID-19 spike in January. However, she said for the month of August, the positivity rate has begun to inch upward. Bob said the numbers have slightly begun to increase, with 52% of this month's total being discovered in the last week. All cases are unvaccinated individuals, with the majority being contacts of 2 positive cases. She noted, however, that there have been a 98% recovery rate among the total number of infected persons thus far.
24 hours. Our samples processed yesterday, Monday, August 30th, 2021. We recorded 12 new cases, which took our total up to 2,348 cases since March 2020. Now, those 12 new cases are contacts of 2 recently positive cases. So our contact tracing would have identified these 12 new cases. They are all unvaccinated. So our current positivity rate for yesterday's sample is 4.6%. In terms of recoveries, we have 2,301 recoveries, and that's a 98% recovery overall. So over the last 7 days, that's where we started to see our increase. I think we had about 26 or so out of the 51 cases were in the last 7 days. So 52% of our cases were just in the last week. So that's something for us to be mindful of.
In examining the age group, which has seen the highest COVID numbers, it was revealed that persons under 44 years of age account for the group with the largest number of COVID-19 infections. According to Bob, there have been a few breakthrough COVID-19 cases, that is infections among persons who are already vaccinated. She noted that there have been a total of 19 thus far, with 43.2% of those cases imported. Statistics on the Delta variant on island were also disclosed today.
Okay, so we have had COVID-19 cases reported in persons who are vaccinated. Some are fully vaccinated and some are partially vaccinated, which means they've just had 1 dose. So in terms of the 19 persons who were vaccinated and tested positive for COVID-19, 9 of them were imported from, various countries. So that's 47.3%, which leaves about 10 persons who were here on the ground in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, so we've heard mention of the Delta variant. Delta variant was detected in 3 of our imported cases. Those 3 cases were all from the United Kingdom, and 2 of them were fully vaccinated, and they have been vaccinated for a while. And also the last case, that person was not vaccinated, but they were not eligible for vaccination as yet.
Bob also gave an update on the number of persons who have been vaccinated thus far in SVG, as well as the figures for the uptake of the various COVID-19 vaccines available on island.
So as Minister mentioned, we have administered over 30,000 vaccines. You might have noticed over the past week, we paused on updating our figures on the dashboard. We had a small team in-house doing a little bit of clearing of a backlog and improving our data quality. So we will resume updating the dashboard vaccine figures from today. We have 19,000 plus first doses and 11,000 second doses. And this just shows us the breakdown by vaccine type. Most persons have taken AstraZeneca. That's because that's the vaccine that we had the most in terms of quantity. Pfizer is the newest one, but we are already seeing over 1,000 persons taking their first dose, and also over 1,000 for Sputnik.
It was also noted at today's news conference that persons awaiting the second component of the Sputnik V vaccine can be administered a second dose using the AstraZeneca or Pfizer vaccines in order to achieve full vaccination. The Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment has partnered with local businesses, Quick Cash and Mariners Hotel in the continued effort to fight against COVID-19 with a vaccination campaign. This campaign involves vaccinated individuals being eligible for a draw where they can win prize money. According to the Agency for Public Information API, Health Promotions Officer Shanika John announced on Monday, August 30th, that the move builds on the previous collaborations with the private sector before and the work the ministry has been doing for the past year, noting that the ministry is grateful for the partnership with the private sector and look forward to continued support. Expressing delight in being part of the venture, Representative for Quick Cash and the Mariners Hotel, Rakisha Marshall, noted that based on research, young adults pose more risk of spreading COVID-19 to their immediate household, but may not be severely impacted. Marshall said the promotional campaign is therefore targeting the younger population, and eligible persons must be 12 to 19 years old, must have received the 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine from September 10 to the 21st, with one person randomly selected to win cash prize of $500 weekly. The draw will be held every Friday. The Quick Cash and Mariners Hotel representative further stated that all participants will then be entered into the grand prize draw for a chance to win $2,000 and a day pass for 2 at Mariners Hotel. This draw will be held on September 10th, 2021. The intentions have access to 3 available vaccines, the Pfizer, Sputnik V, and AstraZeneca. The Ministry of Health is currently offering the Pfizer vaccine for persons between the ages of 12 to 18 years old. Parents, guardians, teachers, and educators are being encouraged to obtain adequate information relating to the vaccine. There has reportedly been an increase in nurses and doctors coming forward to get vaccinated since the Pfizer vaccines have been made available. This is according to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves on radio on Sunday. He said data suggests that there's been an increase by 7% of nurses taking the vaccine at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital.
Up to a week ago, I was told by the Chief Medical Officer that the nurses at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital, the percentage who had taken the vaccine was stuck around 25%. It's now, a week ago, 32%. I think it's gone up since then because more of them have taken the Pfizer since then.
The Prime Minister said more doctors have also come forward to take the jab, which he said is laudable.
The doctors had been around 75%. I expect the doctors would go on up. We have 100 doctors down at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. A lot of people don't know that, you know. And over 75% of them are already vaccinated. That number must be more than 80% now. I don't know because more of them some are taking the Pfizer. And as people see what's happening, and what's happening around the world, and they're understanding more, they're taking the vaccine because it is the single most important scientific tool in the toolbox to fight COVID-19.
Nurses and doctors are considered frontline workers. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister remains hopeful that more persons will take the jab. As he said, the numbers have been encouraging.
I happen to know that more and more persons in the countryside are taking the vaccine. The numbers in the city were larger, around the city, but in the countryside it's picking up. And I'm very hopeful that people will follow the lead of the government, of the authorities, of the 193 countries in the United Nations, of the World Health Organization, of the Pan American Health Organization. We had promised you that we will provide you information about the vaccine. We'll do all the basic things properly. We have done that.
The Public Service Union has called for nurses to withdraw their services for 4 days from September 7th to the 10th. And according to Public Relations Officer of the PSU, Shelley and Alexander Ross, the response so far has been positive. The industrial action has been called for in relation to the amendments of the Public Health Act, which requires frontline workers to get vaccinated, which some say is infringing on their rights. On September 7th and 8th, nurses are expected to stay away from work, and on the 9th and 10th, they are being asked to join the two-day protest with the unions in front of the Parliament building in capital Kingstown. Alexander Ross, who is also a nurse and vice president of the Nurses Association, said nurses should not be afraid to exercise their right in an industrial action as they are covered by law.
So you've been given a mandate and you're protected under the Essential Services Act. You are not liable, or you will not be held liable. And we have to keep in mind too about all the treaties that the government would have signed on to that gives you leverage once you're covered, or once a union call you out to do a protest, to do a withdrawal, you're covered under those acts. So the nurses or any other public servants who want to come out and protest need not worry about them being fired or anything like that. You're covered under those particular acts.
Alexander Ross said as a nurse, she is quite aware about the importance of vaccines and will never discourage anyone from getting vaccinated. However, the approach is all wrong.
Persons, we know the benefit of vaccines generally, and we have seen it. And it is strongly recommended or strongly suggested that you get vaccinated based on the science that we know of how vaccines work. But at the same time, we as well, from this end now, trade union, have to keep in mind that our members, because of how the vaccines were issued, may not want to be vaccinated for one way or the other. So we're saying to persons, if you would have done your research and you decide that you want to be vaccinated, we support you 100%. But if you say, okay, I want to wait and see, or do further reading, we also support you as well. Okay. But we're not saying to anybody, don't or do not take the vaccine, period. We've never said that.
According to the PSU Public Relations Officer, the authorities need to listen to concerns of the nurses, which has not been the case when it comes to the ongoing vaccination exercise, and that she hopes for some resolve after the industrial action.
This is the next step or the next level of getting the government to, well, getting their attention, hoping that they would retract or step back a little bit, and let's have dialogue and discussions and see how best we can meet each other halfway. So the nurses are on board. They would have pledged their support. We have to be realistic. We're not going to get, while we hope that all the nurses will withdraw their service, we're not going to get that. But we're hoping that as many nurses as possible will withdraw the service as planned between the 7th and the 10th of September.
The Ministry of Education today officially launched its education recovery efforts. The 2-year recovery plan is expected to help students catch up with learning loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the eruption of La Soufrière volcano. Today's launching exercise sets in motion officially a number of activities not only geared towards the development of academic skills, but also life skills. It also emphasized special education and disabilities, homes, school and community, and integration of technology in education using apps, websites, and games. Deputy Chief Education Officer Dexton Finley emphasized on the importance of the education recovery program during these challenging times.
Students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines have lost substantial instructional time due to dengue, COVID-19 pandemic and the recent volcanic eruptions, which translate into substantial losses in learning. This recovery program provides the necessary academic, emotional, and psychosocial support to get our children back on track. I urge students, parents, teachers, and persons in the various communities to support the program as we work together to recover.
Senior Education Officer Aldia Gums-Dyer spoke on the target of the program and who stands to benefit from it.
The ROSE program is to assist students in developing the skills and knowledge that they didn't do too well on during online school. Some schools are taking the opportunity to grab the students who did not log into online school at all. Our data shows that about 7% of the students did not log in.
We are trying to get our students ready for the CPA because these are grade 5 going to 6, and given the situation with the Laissez-faire, the COVID-19, we were online for a very long time. It's not easy doing the portfolio online, getting the book reports, the essays, and those things organized, because we need to have the children with us so that we can make these corrections and to guide them along the way.
The Senior Education Officer used the opportunity to encourage parents to enroll their children in the ROLES vacation sessions, which is part of the Education Recovery Program. The Recovery and Learning and Emotional Psychosocial Support ROLES initiative, which is funded by UNICEF, is designed to help with the knowledge and skills that students have missed and also take into consideration the social, emotional, and mental well-being of the students. And students with special education needs and disabilities and primary school students in the early classes stand to benefit tremendously from the Education Recovery Program. Education Officer for Special Education Ryan Charles outlined the ways in which the children will benefit from the program.
Every community worldwide, persons with disabilities are among the most marginalized. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is no exception. With the advent of COVID-19 and the Laissez-faire eruptions, students with disabilities were further marginalized. The Ministry of Education, in its quest to ensure quality education and to eliminate inequalities within the educational system, has sought to ensure that students with disabilities would benefit from the programs that are in place.
Lecturer at the SVG Community College, Anne Hamilton, spoke on the importance of strengthening students academically in their foundation years.
The childhood years are the most critical in a child's life. Now, the science behind it validates it. It says that whatever we do with them, whatever holistic activities that we engage them in, they basically geared towards the future. Now, children at this stage need to be strengthened in numeracy and literacy skills. They also need to be set on a path for future success. And so as educators, we are called upon to engage these students. We are called upon to create learning environments that are optimal for learning. We are also called upon to help them to grow, and so K-4 is seen as a prime time for engaging them.
The Ministry of National Mobilization, with responsibility for social protection of the poor and vulnerable, has launched its social protection policy consultation process, which will be executed for a 2-month period. During the consultation, clients, stakeholder agencies, and communities will come together to develop a policy framework to improve protection efforts of the poor and vulnerable in the society. The policy consultation process is an activity in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning and the World Bank that comes to an end in July 2022. According to the Agency for Public Information, in this first instance, the participants are heads of departments within the ministry, which will be followed by communities, stakeholder agencies, and the general public. In other news now, St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to make several strides in developing its medical cannabis industry. Speaking at the launch of the Analytical Service Provider Facility yesterday at Revelet, the Prime Minister outlined the various achievements the government has made for the development of the industry, including the licensing of traditional cultivators who have received free license with $100 EC renewal fee.
In 2019, we collected $5.3 million in license fees. But you remember, these licensing fees would have a schedule of payments over a period of time, and when you obtain the license, you pay more money, and as you go along, the sums decline for those existing licensees. And in 2020, there was just under $300,000, and in 2021, just over $13,000. But we are coming to a stage now where licenses would have to be renewed, and we'd expect another cycle of fees. Important to realize that among the licensees are 74 traditional cultivators and 10 traditional cultivator groups consisting of 110 members who have received licenses free of charge, and they're due to have their renewal, and all they pay for their renewal is just $100 EC application. We are the only country that specifically carved out a place for traditional cultivators.
PM Gonzalez further noted the economic contribution of the licensing, noting that apart from the millions of dollars invested into the country thus far, there have also been a number of critical capital assets, including greenhouses, irrigation systems, and the like.
Licenses have invested over $20 million thus far, excluding license fees, as part of the setup of the various enterprises, providing income for over 200 Vincentians temporarily. And close to 100 persons are employed currently in cultivation, transportation, drying, packaging, storage, and processing. But it is not just what persons have brought $20 million or thereabouts EC to do the startup of these, excluding the fees. They have imported critical capital assets. The licenses have brought over $6.7 million in capital assets, encompassing greenhouses, irrigation systems, and equipment related to cultivation, harvesting, transportation, pickup trucks for instance, drying, dehumidifiers, packaging, storage, and manufacturing. Just this year alone, up to June, approximately $5 million in sophisticated equipment have landed in St. Vincent and Grenadines as part of the thrust towards a modern medicinal cannabis industry.
An outline of the progress various licensed companies have made from cultivating, manufacturing to exporting products was also given by PM Gonzalez at yesterday's launching ceremony.
Cultivation. 2 foreign investor companies and a major local investor company commenced cultivation activities in 2020 and are refining on-farm activities to achieve good agricultural collection practices, GACP, which will enable export to European markets. Several local and traditional cultivators have entered partnership with one of the major investor companies, Caribbean Cannabis Company, and are now supplying that company with raw cannabis product under the licensing regime. Manufacturing and export. One licensee, Caribbean Cannabis Company, commenced processing of oils March the 17th, this year, at its facility in Spring on the windward side of the island. 2 other major manufacturing facilities are at an advanced stage of development, with one anticipated to become operational in the 3rd quarter of this year. And 2 companies have expressed readiness to export.
16 young Vincentians left the state last Friday, August 27th, as the first group of trainees for the Sandals Beaches Resort, St. Vincent. They joined the Sandals team in the Turks and Caicos Islands for a 9 to 12-month training period. Minister of Tourism Carlos James referred to the departing delegation as young, bright and talented, noting that their training is part of the preparation for the opening of the Sandals Hotel here in SVG. Minister James said approximately 500 Vincentians will be trained offshore, and this is the first of the total number. Regional Public Relations Manager Sandals Resort, Sunil Ramdeen, said his company set out to find stars, but even during the interview process found superstars. Ramdeen welcomed the 16 recruits to the Sandals team. He expressed his joy with the trainees pioneering the way for the many Vincentians who will eventually be trained from front office, restaurant, bar, and housekeeping are among the positions in which the trainees will take up while at Sandals Beaches Resort in the Turks and Caicos Islands. We do wish them all the best.